Tonight I am talking to Preya Samsundar, who is the RNC Regional Communications Director for the RNC. You are the Midwest Regional Director, so you cover what are the states that you cover in the Midwest, Preya?
So I cover North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio.
All the good ones.
All the good ones.
So we were talking earlier about Women's History Month, but we're going to continue and drill down a little bit into the involvement issue and what may have been the impetus or spurring on all of the involvement. And I view it as one of those blessing events that comes from the COVID horror. So you have this horrible situation where you have all of these moms and dads and they're kind of quarantined in their houses, and the parents are starting to see the schooling things and they're starting to get a little agitated because they're seeing what their children are learning and not learning. And so now all of a sudden you have mama bears going, hey, wait a minute, I need to get involved. I think that's a big part of what's going on. There's kind of a brush fire of involvement, if you will.
Absolutely. I mean, when we talk about what flipped Virginia, and I know some folks would like to say that everywhere else outside of, Northern Virginia is bright red, and it very is. But when we talk about what actually flipped Virginia, what brought us so close in New Jersey, we're talking about an education issue. I mean, that's what Glenn Youngkin tapped into so well. I mean, we were seeing horror stories of what was going on at school boards across Virginia. I mean, we all heard the stories. And at that moment, listening to Democrats tell parents that they had no business in their kids' education, that shook parents. Shook parents to their core. And matter of fact, we continue to see Democrats tell this story of, well, if your kids are going to a public school, you have no business in your kids' education. That was the message sent by the Michigan Democrats a few months ago. A few weeks ago, we saw a state rep in Wisconsin, who's a vice chair of the Wisconsin Democrat Party, basically tell folks on Twitter that if you are poor, you do not have a say in your kids' education. That does not sit well with mothers who want to know what their kids are learning, want to make sure that their kids' education is top level. They want to make sure that their kids have the best opportunities afforded to them. And frankly, when you live in the United States, that's what's expected, right? Like, we don't live in, in poor countries in South America, or where it's expected that, the education might not hold up to a certain standard. This is the United States, and when you're sending your kid to a public school, there's an expectation that your kids are going to have top quality, high level education, and that they're going to be able to compete with kids in other districts, in other schools, in other areas of the country. And all of a sudden, COVID hit, and parents were finding out that they could finish a week's worth of school in a matter of a couple of days, that their kids actually weren't learning what they were told they would be learning. They were told that online classes would be just the same as in-person learning. And now what we're seeing is study after study, story after story about children's mental health. We're seeing stories about how forced masking of children is harming developmental capabilities for young children and babies. We're seeing stories about how kids who were forced to participate in online learning are now having to retake classes in some cases, because the quality of their education is not what it would have been if they were in person.
No, absolutely right. Now, when I think mama bears, I think about one mama bear at the RNC that I can think of right off the bat. You probably know who I'm talking about there, but Ronna McDaniel considers herself kind of in that same, I would say, put her in the mama bear category, because she's talked many, many times about her kids and schooling and things. And so she wrote an op-ed in Town Hall recently, and I want to just read a little section from it. She was referring to the NCAA swimmer Leah Thomas, and she says, Thomas has become the face of the debate over transgender athletes, but the same story is playing out all over America. Female athletes who have dedicated their lives to their sport are seeing their opportunities erased by men dominating their field. This is outrageous. Pitting females against males and pretending it's still a fair competition makes a mockery of women's sports and undermines the very reason athletics are separated by sex in the first place. The article at Town Hall is this op-ed by Ronna McDaniel is titled Fighting for Women's Rights on the Playing Field. And what a timely article right during Women's History Month.
Absolutely. And I just want to say you're absolutely right about Chairwoman McDaniel. She is the very definition of a mama bear. And it's absolutely incredible because in a lot of ways, she was the catalyst, if you will, because of her own experiences with her own family in Michigan, having to experience, a poor handling of COVID in the education system out in Michigan. She was really a catalyst that got this conversation started in the first place. You're absolutely right. And then just pointing back to, the chairwoman's op-ed in Town Hall, I mean, the chairwoman hit the nail on the head and is really just having a conversation that folks are having in their homes. I mean, we all know how much time parents spend to help their kids succeed in life. We all know the time that they spend carting their kids to soccer practice or softball or tennis, taking them to dance or band practice, all in an effort to get their kids prepared for college, to help them get into, that choice college. And all of a sudden, Democrats have erased that entire process that parents have worked so hard to make sure that their kids have a fighting chance at getting scholarships, of getting into that perfect college for their kids, their kids' dream school, mainly by saying that people should be able to compete in sports based on how they identify as their gender, not as their biological gender, not as how they were born and created by God. And so, the chairwoman is actually hitting this head on. She is tapping into an issue that is so important to parents across the country, and especially to moms and young girls who are now having to grapple with the fact that, this kid who, a couple of years ago might have been on the men's swim team or the men's track team or the men's tennis team has now chosen to identify as a woman and is now beating them for scholarships and placements in top schools across the country. And that's a heartbreaking moment to sit there and have to reckon with.
It really is. At the end of this, the final paragraph of this op-ed reads, while liberal elites fail our daughters, Republicans are fighting to save women's sports. And I love that idea. I think that is a really good winning message from the Republicans, don't you, Preya, in the last 30 seconds here?
Absolutely. And the best part of it is Republican women who are fighting to not only preserve women's sports and girls sports, but they're also fighting for moms and young women and women of all ages. So this cycle, I think folks, when they head to that ballot box, they can know that Republican women are fighting for them.
I agree with you 100%. Preya, thank you so much for weighing in on this topic tonight. I appreciate it. I was so pleased that you said that you would be on, and we will see you again soon. Thanks so much. And